Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, joins us on 365 Sports. We have had Dennis on many times, and a lot, of course, since back in July with USC, UCLA, or even last summer with Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC. Dennis, thank you very much for your time. Your thoughts. What does this actually mean, in your opinion, the new TV deal or the reported numbers that you also had in your story?
Yeah, I don't hold back. I think it's a masterstroke by Brett Yormark. He was telling people that this league without Texas and Oklahoma was going to earn more, and by God, he did it. I'm still not quite sure how, but to get more money and maybe get more than $50 million per school means that the existing Big 12 schools, the 8, don't have to readjust their budgets, which I thought they would. I thought, Bob Bowles told us that the league is losing half its value. For sure it was going to lose some of its value. But no, it actually increased its value. So Iowa State is doing a massive facilities upgrade. Kansas, which is planning $300 million worth of that sort of stuff, can just go along and try to raise money instead of patching holes. And I think it showed what those two rights holders, Fox and ESPN, thought of the Big 12. The programming without Texas and Oklahoma was worth showing. And I know this is true. The fact that Baylor and Oklahoma State played for it last year, you've had 4 ranked teams this year. One of them in the playoff conversation, TCU, had a lot to do with it. In other words, this conference could be fine on its own without Texas and OU.
How much does the impending college football playoff also help open executives' eyes to the fact that just because you don't have a top 4 team doesn't mean that this conference isn't good? And this year, like you just said, for the Big 12, is kind of proving that, even though we're not there yet on the expanded playoff.
Right. I mean, I think I just answered that. You're going to have in most years you're going to have a team in there. There's going to be 12 spots. There's going to be 6 at large. The Big 12 in most years should have at least one team in there. Given the power of a Baylor, of Oklahoma State, of Kansas State being very competitive and consistent year after year, that it was going to be in there. For the likes of, to be fair, for the likes of Texas and OU, they're going to a conference where you don't necessarily have to win it, and you can get in the playoffs at 9-3 or 10-2. I don't know if that's going to satisfy those fans, but that's the reality of one of the benefits of going to this conference.
Dennis, I think the 4 joining schools, BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati, already felt pretty good about everything. But you think they feel like they hit the lottery now after seeing this TV deal?
Yeah. Look, they were coming from a position that they were going to see untold riches to begin with. The money they were getting wasn't anywhere near what they were going to get in the Big 12. But for it to be this much, I think has to be huge for those leagues. No, they're absolutely giddy about it. And they were starting from, I'm trying to think what they got. I think $4 million in the Americans, the UCF and Houston and Cincinnati, to go from that to possibly whatever it is, $50 million with an expanded playoff. That's quite a leap.
Dennis, what does this say? Bob Bowlesby came off the canvas back in the fall of last year after Texas, Oklahoma. The Big 12 has been resilient for the last 12 years with departures 3 different times. But what does this say about Brett Yormark, that he came in, said this was going to happen, and he actually did it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the credibility is through the roof. He was telling people this. He was saying it out loud. He's being quoted as saying we're going to make more. And then I think it was John Oran from Sports Business Journal last week put that $400 million figure out there that I subsequently was able to determine was accurate. Is what they were going to get. It just floored me. And then they ended up, the final figure was right there, $380 million. If you add an expanded playoff, it probably does come to $400 million per year. But they were able to get that. So this guy, what I've been able to, when you guys have talked to him, what I've been able to, I guess, just determine about him is that not only is he a wheeler dealer, New York guy, okay, but something I didn't know about him, he knows everybody in the industry, and everybody knows him. So when he walked into the room with Fox and ESPN, he's done business with them before. He's run the Barclays Center, he's run the Brooklyn Nets, he's been to Vegas, he's done all this stuff around New York, ran the Nets. So he had more experience in this space than I thought. He was very involved with the people that run Endeavor in New York, which is the Big 12 media consultant. So that was a huge plus. And no one was even thinking about the fact that everyone was talking about the Pac-12. Okay, they're in their exclusive negotiating window. Well, the Big 12 leapfrogged them to get their deal done. And what's going to be left for the Pac-12? They may get the same or more money, but I think it's more for them. It's more about when are they going to play their games, because not only are they going to be going head to head in those exclusive windows with the SEC and the Big Ten, but now the Big 12 is going to be in some of those games. When are they going to play their games where people can see them the most? I think they're going to be heavily, they're going to be heavy on streaming, for better or worse. A lot of people are betting streaming on the come, and it's going to hit someday. We're all going to be watching our shows and cable shows and sporting events on streaming someday soon. It's probably going to cost just as much as cable. That's another discussion, but it hasn't yet. And I got to think those 80 coaches, administrators in the Pac-12 are pulling their hair out in terms of visibility alone, in terms of recruiting alone, because only 85% of the country has at least one streaming service. That's a very low number. And I don't know what the number is, but the entire country, like Morgantown in the Big 12, last I checked, wasn't even wired for broadband where you could get streamed. So that's huge. And if that's the majority of what the Pac-12 has going forward, that's a problem.
So, Dennis, how do you think that they, as individual institutions, react to it, especially ones that might be more attractive for expansion in other leagues?
Well, my first question is, does the Big 12, are they going to have a granted rights? I think they are. I think that's the next question to be answered when they go and do this. I don't think there's any question when you do a deal like this, everybody's in. But they have to sign the papers. That's not the case in the Pac-12. If they did, they'd have a deal done. They want to keep their options open. And what does that mean? I will tell you this, that the rights holders do not want expansion. That doesn't mean that they would, that the Big 12 wouldn't do anything. But they don't want it. They want to stay. They are interested in cost certainty. They're basically interested in certainty, period. Okay, we get this many games at these times and these windows. They don't want to have to figure this out all over again, because from the beginning, I've been told that any combination of the Pac-12 and Big 12 is basically the same number. Now, we were also told the Big 12 would take a huge cut in this next media rights deal. So maybe Brett Yormark has figured something out where adding 2 or 4 Pac-12 teams gets him more money. I don't know.
Dennis, this is a different subject, but we did see Auburn finally make the move. Brian Harsin is out. They hired the new AD already from Mississippi State. Your thoughts on that finally coming to the end of the road for Harsin and what that means now for Auburn moving forward in your eyes?
Well, not finally. He lasted barely a year and a half.
Well, true, yeah.
He's just been hung out to dry for it.
Right.
Since about February when they had that trumped up investigation. I feel sorry for the guy. I think he's a good coach. But it looks like it's going to be a Lane Kiffin right of first refusal thing, and maybe a Hugh Freeze, something like that. I know Hugh Freeze would call there on broken glass to be back in the big time again. But I think, Lane Kiffin has a decision to make. He's going to get a huge raise and probably an extension of years wherever he goes. Does Jimmy Sexton, whose agent, leverage that for him to stay at Ole Miss if he wants to stay there? Or does he get, the same thing at Auburn, which has more resources, but is a fractured at times place with lots of medleys? Does he want to get involved in that? So until the Lane thing resolves itself, I think it's his to lose.
Dennis, your thoughts on what you saw with Kansas State beating the living soul out of Oklahoma State?
Yeah. God, that came out of nowhere, didn't it? Not that Kansas State won. They were favored. Everybody says a big upset. No, it wasn't an upset. Kansas State was favored by 2.5. But something we hadn't seen out of Chris Kleiman's team for the most part, just a total shutdown and dominance of an opponent, of a conference opponent who was on an equal plane, was amazing to me. With a backup quarterback, Will Howard. Chris Kleiman is just, I'll tell you what, he's exactly what they needed after Bill Snyder. He's delivered for the most part. Kansas State's in the running for, look, not only the Big 12, but, maybe a New Year's Day bowl after that, maybe the league title. I thought it was one of the biggest wins in Kansas State history, and I've been around since Bill Snyder went into his office with only 3 to 4 walls erected at the Veneer Complex in Manhattan. But to do that to a top 10 ranked opponent was amazing.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, has been all over the TV deal. Dennis, do you feel like in the end, though, all of the speculation of a Super 2 conference and now the Big 12 is stabilized, whatever the ACC eventually does, the Pac-12, you hope that they get something that's healthy for them, that in the end it's all going to be pretty much what it was before, just money, more money for the SEC and Big 10 or not?
Well, I think that's what will define it will be as the same as it was before. Those conferences, those commissioners alone get in a room and decide what the revenue is in the expanded playoff. Who's to keep, Greg Sankey and Kevin Warren from saying, all right, we're going to take half of this, the rest of you can divide everything up more. Because I think it's going to be something like that. It will be a number that is agreed upon that keeps them out of court, out of antitrust court. But they will get right up to that line and say, because the number right now is about $1.6 billion for a 12-team playoff annually. Let's say they take half. And because of, this is why they've done this. They've got the best name brands in the country in those 2 leagues, in those 32 spots. They split $800 million, and the other 8 conferences split the other 800, with maybe the ACC, the Pac-12, and Big 12 getting the lion's share of that. But it's going to be really interesting because it's not going to be like it is now where the Power 5 each get an equal share, and then the group of 5 split 22%. I think that's going to change significantly. Then the question becomes, what does that mean in recruiting, in ability to compete, ability to hire coaches, all that.
Dennis, one thing for clarification, with the number that yesterday came out and also in your story, if you add that and then all the other, like the college football playoff money, whatever that number is going to be, men's basketball tournament units, whatever that's going to be, bowl games as well, included in that number yesterday is Tier 3. Is it really going to be around 50 to 55 million for each Big 12 team, you think?
That's what Big 12 schools believe, because the 380 million divided by 12, that's called an AAV, average annual value, is 31.6 million. Okay. You add in what is now the college football playoff revenue, bowl revenue, NCAA tournament revenue. The Big 12 teams are getting about 16 million a year on average per school. That brings you right up to 47 million. I think with an expanded plan, and I just told you what the numbers are going to be for that, the increase in that payout is easily going to push you over 50 million. So, yeah, I do think that. And the Big 12 schools think that, and they're very, very happy.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate your time as always. Great stuff yesterday, and also covering what you do. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, with us here on 365 Sports. We'll have Matt Brown extra